Guys, this morning we continue our discussions, and this morning I have the privilege of sitting in studio and chatting with Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt-Angus, who is the political leader of the IDA and also the former presiding officer of the THA. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Shenell. Good morning to the people of Tobago and wherever you reside.
Right now, it's a pleasure to have you here this morning, especially to share some of your expertise as it relates to your former capacity as presiding officer in the Tobago House of Assembly. Now, the conversation as it pertains to Tobago autonomy is one that is still there, it's still looming. And we heard this current administration saying when they won this last general election that moving forward, the number one item on the agenda or priority list for the two Tobago representatives, has and will be to go to Trinidad and secure the Tobago autonomy. Talk to us about where you think we are and what is needed from those two representatives as it pertains to securing autonomy for Tobago.
Well, the IDA has always maintained since the passing of Hojoy that the Tobago bills are not adequate as they are being presented. I came in here today and I looked around at the number of young people you have in here passing in and out, and I asked myself, how many of them were able to weigh in on those bills? I don't know, Shenell, did you have an opportunity to attend and weigh in? I don't know if you were at the age then to be able to do that, but at least 95% of them, I'm sure, did not have that opportunity. And so what we are looking at is, if this election you had 5,000 new voters coming to the poll, and when you look at the timing of how many voters we've had over time, you're talking about 12 to 15,000 new youth and young adults who should have an interest in this, because we now have shifts in how employment is being laid out in terms of careers, in terms of AI, in terms of the social issues, crime. All of these things impact your views and your experiences and what you would want to see in the Constitution. And so we have always maintained that it is time, before we send something down, that we go back to the people, ensure we entertain the young people, and primarily now the communities. They have a viewpoint that is worth listening to, and we have a responsibility to bring everyone on board, include them, and let's have a real discussion. Times have changed. Political parties have changed, and we need to have that conversation ongoing now.
Right, and even as you are calling for that type of consultation again, what type of feedback are you getting? Because there are the persons who say, well, we have already done years of extensive consultation with the public, but you heard from the Chief Secretary that consultation is still needed. He would have said that when the bill was going before the Parliament, they still want to send persons out to get information from the community. Do you see that type of collaboration happening to ensure that persons do have the opportunity to have a say once more?
But that's not what the current bill says. The current bill says that he's taking it up, sending it to Trinidad, and having the AG review the bill and decide what can be added and not added.
Not sure.
So
but I
that
remember
is what that is what the current motion tomorrow will be debated on. So it's one thing to say you will have consultations, but what is the process that you're using? And the process that you're using is already flawed, because if you're already taking the bills to send it to Trinidad for the AG to review, it's a flawed process. And therefore, he needs to take a step back and really think through what is going on. We have to ask ourselves in the first place, why do we want autonomy? Whether it's autonomy, self-determination, or whatever. Why do we want that as a people? And really, it comes down to development. We want it so that we can, chart a way for a faster development for our island, and I dare say, and the country. Because let us not forget, Tobago is half the country.
Right.
And so whatever we are doing here is not just for ourselves, it's about significantly contributing to the development of the country.
Right. And a
I don't
development that
think-
the people of Tobago can have input on as well.
Correct. And I don't think successive administrations has ever presented the case like that. It's always about, okay, Tobago need 5%, 8%, whatever. But the case has never been presented that, listen, we want this so we could be in a better place to contribute to the development of the country because we are half the nation. And so when you look at it like that, you begin to get different, pieces coming out of that legislation, which is important to us. If we approve this legislation the way it is, we will always continue to say it's not enough money. It's not enough money.
So do
because
you think
it
that
doesn't
this
take
is being
the
done
whole
in an
into
effort to
consideration.
speed up the process to ensure that the bill is back on the order paper in the Parliament soon?
Yeah, well, it would be a mistake to do that for political expediency, because you're suffering the people of Tobago just for your own gains. I would hope that the Chief Secretary has a bigger, thought process than that, but it is concerning that this piece of legislation is being sent down as is, and nobody knows what changes have been made or being able to contribute. We have to bring the people into this. And it's also not enough. If we are thinking about the economics of the country, we have to understand that over the last, 60 odd years, our economy has not really grown significantly when you consider the amount of oil and gas we have had passing through this country. And over the last 10 years, it declined by about 23%, even further under a PNM administration. And the people came out in their numbers not to vote for something, but to vote against the pain that they were feeling and the opportunity, hopefully, to get that pain relieved. But we've been here before. And so if we don't consider what is the real driver of our economy and how we get there, we will continue to have very dissatisfied voters who no longer want to vote because you've had a low voter turnout, voters who no longer feel that it's a democratic nation that we live in, and therefore the flip-flopping of administrations but no relief to the economy is what will happen.
Right. And even as it pertains to the input of Tobagonians and understanding where we're going with this Tobago autonomy, why is it so important for the proposals that are being sent to Parliament to be publicized for the people of Tobago to see it and to agree to it at this point?
But it's not just being publicized. We have to actually hear the views, because when you hear the views from the Tobago public, the new Tobago public, you may find that those bills are nothing like what people are talking about, and you have to change it. So you literally have to find ways of engaging persons, the youth, the individual organizations, and even the diaspora. Because with what is happening out there right now, many of them have to come back home or thinking about coming back home. So they now have to be engaged in what they think is a Tobago they can see inside of the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. But we can't just talk about Tobago's autonomy and the constitutional reform that gives rise to that we also have to speak to a constitutional reform of the national constitutional reform.
Right.
Because we are so linked that you cannot just treat with Tobago's issue and not treat with the national issue. What do I mean by that? We live in a cabinet-dominant society. That does not augur well for democracy. In other parts of the world, you see where you have parliaments that are much larger than a cabinet and could provide the necessary oversight to ensure that the people's needs are being delivered, that the development of the country is being achieved. But that cannot happen if you don't have the appropriate oversight of the parliament. And what they're attempting to do is do the same thing in Tobago, where you're giving Tobago the opportunity to make laws, but there's no oversight. There's not even a second house in Tobago. There's no oversight of the executive. And we've seen how that has gone for the last 3 years, where people are just doing whatever they want. A minority of one cannot help anything. And therefore, you need that cabinet oversight. You also need for us to determine how do we get a Senate that answers to the people and not a Senate that answers to Parliament. Because the people need to have their voices be heard. It's not being heard right now. And that is why people are just giving up and saying, government come, government goes, it doesn't matter. And that's not good enough for a country to develop without a democracy, because it wouldn't go anywhere. And therefore, you need to have a Senate that is elected and answers to the people. We should have 4 senators from the people of Tobago in Parliament whose responsibility would be to ensure the appropriation budget every year is in place. And not just for Tobago, that you have for Toco, that you have for Princestown. So no area would be complaining that they didn't get enough, because they understand this is about the development of the whole country now.
Right.
And therefore, Tobago should get its allocation. Once you could present your appropriate development plan to the Senate, therefore, you would be getting your appropriate funds to deal with it. Now, there comes a point where Tobago may be very developed, and therefore some of those funds may be taken away and given to maybe Toco or somewhere else. And we're talking about a development budget. We are not talking about a recurrent budget. We're talking about a development budget. Okay? A development is where our issue is right now. We also need to ensure we bring the communities into the picture. Countries across the world are recognizing that no longer that you can just have big governments doing everything. You have to empower the communities and empower them meaningfully, so that young people in communities, why do they have to wait and complain they don't have jobs when there are a whole lot of pavements to be done, box drains to be done in communities and not getting done? If the communities had the wherewithal to do it, they will then decide, okay, we have contractors living here, we are going to employ them, they employ the young people, and the communities begin to work together. When a young person is working on a pavement in their own community, there's a different level of pride and work ethic that comes around, So, again, communities' rights need to be in that so that they are protected. So no matter what political entity we have in Tobago, they can't just decide, okay, well, I'm not giving you any money or, to do whatever. That, communities are protected, they have their rights, and their voices are heard in the Parliament.
And have you written officially to the Chief Secretary asking him about the consultation that you have been proposing for a while?
No. The last time I wrote to him concerning the national security and people should have a seat on the National Security Council, the Chief Secretary did not respond to me except very disrespectfully on a platform in Speyside. So I don't, I don't subscribe to that. Yes?
Understood. Is there any role that the presiding officer can play as it regards to advising the Chief Secretary on the motion as it relates to the Tobago Autonomy Bill and advising that possible consultation be done?
No, the presiding officer can only treat with the intent and the structuring of the motion.
Okay.
Yes? If they have a relationship outside of that, maybe she can, but in the role as presiding officer, you could only deal with the intent and the structuring of the motion. You talk about what have we been doing. We have been meeting with other political leaders expressing our concern with the bill. And I dare say that I am happy that the minority leader has agreed. And I hope that it is not just for political posturing that he disagrees with it. Yeah? Because we do recognize that the PNM sent down a bill, the same bill, and was attempting to approve it. But I think that he is now beginning to recognize the dangers of the bill and is prepared to look at something differently. Yes? And it is really about all the others and really all the people of Tobago. We ask Tobagonians to take off your political hat.
I'm glad that you mentioned that.
It's about Tobago.
Understood. What role does the actual public have as it pertains to doing the work to put the pressure on this administration to ensure that they include the voices of the people as it pertains to whatever is being sent down to Trinidad on Tobago's behalf? Again,
you bring us back to the fact that the public don't have a voice. There is no way of having a voice in the legislature, and that is why the constitution needs to change. They don't even have a voice in the parliament, because when you send your representatives to Trinidad, you vote for them, but then they don't account to you. They either account to the prime minister or the person who, or the opposition leader, or the person who appointed them to be in the Senate. They are no longer your representatives. And the mere fact that the first thing we have seen is to form the whole cabinet and do a number of things before we open parliament says to us that the people have a back seat all the time. Yeah? And that is why the constitution needs to change to allow people now to have a voice, to express themselves. In the UK Parliament, when you had that Windrush situation and they were they wanted to send home droves of people, you then had people approach their representatives and say, hey, if you don't change that, you're not going back there. And they formed petitions, they did everything. And eventually, the UK Parliament was forced to listen.
Right.
Where do we have that role here?
There is a THA election looming on the horizon. Is this not the perfect opportunity for persons to come out and say, okay, we want you to come back to the public and give us the ability to have our say on whatever is submitted to Trinidad on Tobago's behalf?
I'm not sure. You mean go to the THA elections and...
No. I mean, that was the time when people are being vocal about what they want and what they require from their representatives as a THA election is on the horizon. Now they have to go back to the people. They're out, they're walking in the communities and soliciting votes. Is this not the perfect time for the public?
I think we have to be mature enough to have a proper arrangement to get people's views. We have a situation where this assembly probably employs 80%. It's probably gone up to about 80% of the people, yes, in the workforce. Are you expecting people to go and tell their employer, we don't agree with what you're saying? Yeah? That's not enough. So we need to have a proper arrangement where you call all political parties that entered the general election, you have experts, and you form a committee or a task force, and you set up getting information from, I said, the youth, the individuals, the organizations, the villages, the communities. Get the information from everyone, collect it, and put it together in a format that now then can be debated in the assembly, and also then sent to Trinidad after it is approved. When you're doing it like that, you should have no problem with the debate in the assembly, because everyone would have been at the table. It is time for us to have some political maturity about this. This is our chance, and it is not enough to be calling people what? Deadbeats. I mean, again, being very disrespectful. Every person who goes to Parliament puts a block for us to climb upon. Whether it is a block that we consider negative or not, a block has been placed. So it is time for us to stop being disrespectful in the space. The elections are over. Let us move forward. Yes? You cannot, those two parliamentarians who have gone to Trinidad, if we truly want the constitutional changes that we want for this autonomy bill, they will have to speak to the PNM. So why do we continue? Elections are over. Let us now see how are we building those bridges so we in Tobago can truly get what we want. Because just saying that the government could give you, that is not enough. They may give you an increased percentage. They may give you, whatever. But to get the proper constitutional changes we want, including, let us not forget, spatial definitions of Tobago and Trinidad and even our communities. To get things like that, we have to negotiate with both sides. You don't cuss somebody today and get up tomorrow and say, I'm sorry, but I want this. Yeah, that comes from an abusive relationship.
Totally understood. And moving forward, what are some of the plans of the IDA as it pertains to this Tobago Autonomy Bill?
We will continue to reach out to the other political parties. We will continue to engage the people in communities. Don't forget that we teamed up with Dr. Vaness James during the Constitution, and we visited more than 15 communities across Tobago to get their views. And so that is why we can speak with conviction now, because we heard the initial views, and all of them, all 15 of them, nobody really said no. They want to have a voice. They want to have the right to do things in their communities. But if we don't set up a process to truly hear them, then we will be losing out terribly with this bill. And so that is why we are going to be going back to the communities. We're going to be talking to, like I said, the other political parties on the island, because this is about Tobago. This is about Tobago's future. And if the Chief Secretary is allowed to just send that bill as is to Trinidad, proper smoke we pipe, we're going to be in the doldrums for the next, 30 odd years, because those bills would not solve the issues that continue to plague us from time immemorial, and it will not help our contribution towards the Trinidad and Tobago economy. Again, I say we are half the country, and it is time that we begin to approach these conversations knowing that we are half the country, and we have a responsibility to develop economically such that we can contribute to the overall growth and development of this of the country, and not just the island.
Excellent. We want to thank you so much, Dr. Angus, for coming in this morning and discussing that with us. I mean, this conversation could go on for a long time, especially as it pertains to some of the detailed proposals that the political parties have and place areas for adjustments that you guys have discussed as you came together and sat among that table and gave your contribution. I'm hoping that we could continue in a series of conversations as it pertains to the autonomy bill and not just have one conversation,
Yes,
so we can continue the discussion, bringing on a number of experts and stakeholders and political entities that can help us to have a greater understanding.
I think it's the responsibility of the media to do that too, so I congratulate you for that.
Yes, because I mean, it's not just about one party being responsible for Tobago autonomy. We all in Tobago have a responsibility. That's why I asked, what responsibility would you put on the public as it pertains to us using our voice and putting pressure on this administration to ensure that whatever is sent to Trinidad or whatever is made into law, whether it be by the Constitutional Amendment Bill or the Tobago Island Government Bill, that it is a true reflection of what Tobagonians truly want. And so I will have the conversations with my colleagues here at Tobago because I know it was something that they would have discussed on several occasions last year before the bill came before the parliament, and we were unable to do so. But even as we are, quote unquote, starting over with the bill, maybe we can start over by allowing everyone to have a say where that is concerned.
Yes, and I truly hope that the Chief Secretary tomorrow will agree to pull back on that decision to send to Trinidad and agree to forming the committee and proper arrangements to really hear from the people of Tobago wherever they reside, because we have about 300,000 people living in Trinidad too, who are Tobagonians and Tobagonian roots. And how do we hear from everyone? Because it is important.
Excellent. Well, we want to thank you again. So guys, we're going to take a quick break right here and we'll be back right after this. See you soon. Passion starter.